Welcome to the UI experience. Welcome to the UI experience.
How you doing, everybody? How you doing? This is Patrick Irvin with the UI Daily Show number 28. I will be filling in for Brother Jaleel. He's busy doing some other things, so we're going to step in and fill in for him and make it do what it do. Today, we have 3 topics, and we have two people that are going to ride on with me. We got Brother Terry, who's a regular, and we have the Professor Carlton Jones, who teaches at a university in Philadelphia. What university is that you teach at, Professor? You told me, but I can't remember now.
Well, it's actually Harkham Junior College.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll expand to some HBCUs in the near future. But right now, time will only permit for me to teach at Harkham. But I like it so far. It's a nice, intimate experience. And particularly because I get to work with satellite campuses, I get to teach a predominantly African-American core students. So that really helps out because it can relate to a lot of the things that I'm telling them. And I don't have to worry about a whole lot of submissive reporting and having to deal with a lot of the administrative stuff. So,
right.
But yeah, it's a good thing there.
All right. Well, thank you for being on with us and agreeing to step in and fill in the gap. And of course, you know, like I said earlier, we got Brother Terry, who's our radio media expert and who's the information man. Whenever we have a question, we can go to Brother Terry, and he got the answer.
I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here, brother. Always glad to be able to throw a little insight into what our situation is as black folks. It's just good to have this forum. You know, I always appreciate UI. I didn't know that it existed, and now that I do, you know, I can't let it go. And I'm hoping other people catch that fever. You know, you may not know what it is, but once you find out what it is, jump on board, catch the fever, and stay with it.
All right. So the first topic, we're going to take it back to Ferguson, and we're going to keep bringing it back to Ferguson because we don't want people to forget. We don't want things to die down. And there are new developments happening in Ferguson all the time. The police chief recently came out and apologized to the people for the way the investigation was handled with them leaving Brother Brown's body laid out in the street for all those hours and for several other things involved in the investigation. The community largely, it seems, accepted, although there were some people that didn't. And this is where things differ as to what happened next, because the news is saying he then decided he was going to march with them. Things got out of hand. A fight of some sort broke out. People were arrested, and the police chief was whisked away. But we have insight from somebody that was actually there, involved in all of the situations, and what she says is he came out and apologized, and the community asked him to march with them as a show of solidarity, if you will. He came out and marched. There was a lot of pushing and shoving by the police officers, and eventually, I guess, a group of policemen decided they wanted to get up next to the police chief to protect him, I'm assuming, and they ended up shoving the crowd and pushing people down on the ground, and in the middle of all of the falling and everything, the police chief got pushed, and that's what caused the insight. The police started aggressively detaining people at that point. And saying that it was a riot or whatnot. So she's saying that everything was instigated by the police, and that the media is not accurately reporting what's going on. In other news out there, we have other things going on where we have influential people. We have rappers and actors and other people speaking on the Darren Wilson situation and what's happening out there with Mike Brown and Ferguson. And they're basically saying that it doesn't have anything to do with them. They're not worried about it. We shouldn't be worried about it. And other things to that, like we should let the law of the land prevail and other things of that like. And you hear this reoccurring theme going there. And to the last point, before I ask the question to the people that are riding with me, to my panelist co-hosts, you have things that aren't being reported, such as the unified effort, the galvanizing effort to stand out front as the kids were getting off the school buses and to be celebrated as they return to school, when they return to school. You have the gangs deciding to come together to protect stores from being looted and to protect the community. You have a bunch of other positive signs of life for the black community happening out there that isn't being reported. But with all that being said, I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to start with you, Professor. Is any of this surprising, either on the side of what's being reported, what's not being reported, or what's the new developments that are happening, even to the point of the extension? Is any of this surprising? And what are you expecting to happen from this point forward? And what should the black community be doing right now?
Well, and thanks for coming to me, Patrick, and thanks for you for inviting me onto the panel today. First, I'm not surprised by anything that occurs when you talk about the way the police policies are, the way the handling of the situation has occurred. You know, it's funny because last night, as I taught my course, one of the videos I showed my students was the Stanford prison experiment, in which a group of actors were brought in off of Stanford University, off the college campus, and they were brought in to act as prisoners and security guards in a prison. And in 14 days, you had people who were going clinically insane. You had people who were taking on their roles and using it in abusive ways and abusing their powers and authority, so forth. And I think that is the nature of what we're dealing with out there in Ferguson right now, because that was just a microcosm of what we as a black community are dealing with when you talk about how we're perceived by authority, how we perceive our roles in dealing with authority figures, so-called authority figures, and the constant clash. What you also have now, and I think it was a mistake for the people to allow for the police commissioner to come on board after he personally was in charge of botching this entire investigation, which should have been an open and shut case. But because of his handling of the event, we and I'm saying we as members, I'm not from that area, but just as the black community should not have allowed for that to occur. We're too forgiving when things happen to us from the dominant society, and we're often looking to turn the other cheek. And I think that was a power play made by people who really should not be leading out there in Ferguson. You got organizations who are really doing more damage than good right now with some of the tactics that I've seen out there in Missouri. And to qualify that with the police whole with their armbands and so forth in support of Darren Wilson, you know, that's just more so overt racism showing itself, because this is how they felt all along. And when you have, it seems as though whenever there's an issue concerning race, for some strange reason, black people don't like to deal with it, due to our cognitive dissonance, and white people band together as if their backs are against the wall. And so you have these police officers acting as though their backs are against the wall and dealing with this whole process. And what's happening is now is more, if it wasn't never before, it's more of a us versus them. And I think it's real clear that we need to see them as the enemy and not necessarily somebody that can be bargained with at this time. And to further go along with some of the things that are happening that are positive, that are not going to be projected, well, that's why we need to get our media people out there to cover those events. And I'm glad that some people in social media, are sharing these events, and we need to do it with more vigor, because we have to continue to fight the image that is being displayed about us to the world and back to us, because we're buying into that. So when you add all that together, and then you look at these stars and entertainers and so forth who believe that their financial success has given them the ability to gain a white privilege certificate and status, a lot of them are trying to protect their own personal brand by speaking out against us, because it's always profitable for people to speak out against us making noise, us being heard, and us being, repaired. In other words, receiving reparations for anything that occurs to us. So, anything that happens to us. So, when we look at it from that point, I don't even acknowledge anything that a star would say unless they're actually out in the forefront of our struggle. Because it's like the Matrix. Anybody can be an agent. And I believe some of you guys were talking about this the other day. Anybody who's not with us can possibly be an agent at any given time and be used against us. And it's funny and ironic as to how often there may be one or two voices in the crowd that are speaking against our movement, but those one or two voices are who the cameras go to and who the microphones are shoved in front of. So when we look at that, we have to always understand, just as our good brother said, and I hate that I can't remember his name off the time, but basically, if you don't understand white supremacy, everything else you know will only serve to confuse you. And I think that a lot of people are confused right now in terms of this battle that we have with white supremacy, and the confusion was shown when the people chose to align themselves with the enemy, which is the police chief, and trying to, heal some damage. And I can go all and all into this, so I'm just going to stop right here because I know there's only a limited amount of time left in the show.
Well, I appreciate that, but you just said a whole mouthful. What you got to follow that up with, Brother Terry?
First of all, the points are valid. I mean, this is why, again, we need to have these kinds of discussions. Each of us in the community has a voice, and we have a say, and we need to have these voices be heard. Hopefully it'll galvanize us to come together and actually start to make some plans ourselves as to what we would do to attack the problems. In terms of am I surprised? Of course not. I've just been on earth too long. I was born during the civil rights movement. I was born during a time when we were segregated. No, I'm not surprised. Am I surprised that Darren Wilson's officers are showing him support? Of course not. What would you expect for him to do? Turn against the man? They're white, he's white. So that's obvious as well. So that doesn't surprise me either. As far as actors and things that are going against the race, why would I be surprised? The further away that you get from the field, the less you want to return to it. So, of course, you're going to have people that start making hundreds of millions of dollars, and they love that lifestyle. Do you think they're going to give that up for one dead black kid? Of course they are not. So I don't count them either. I'm just, as the professor said, anytime you start to get to a certain status level and you want to maintain that status level, you got to start sleeping with the enemy. You got to start going and sleeping in the bed with the white man. You got to start marrying white folks and making babies with white folks and doing white TV commercials, that promote their products for longevity and life and health. So, no, I'm not surprised. In this particular case of what happened in Ferguson, it's too little, too late. This should have happened if he was clearly sincere about what happened to the young man that got killed, to Mike Brown. Then he should have come out in the beginning when the incident first happened, not a couple months down the road. Now all of a sudden you want to come out and, you got your little T-shirt on, your little shirt on and regular clothes trying to act civilian and say, oh, I'm sorry. It's just too late. It's no different than if I turn around and violate someone's right then and there. If I don't apologize and make amends, if I come and try to do it 6-7 months later, it's just calculated and it's phony. It's fraudulent. So when the incident happened last night, again, am I surprised? No, because the white officers are going to protect that white chief. So if they instigated it or if they did not instigate it, the point is the whole thing was a fraud. It was a front. They know that they were wrong. And one of the things that I've seen that white people will never, ever be able to do is simply admit that they were wrong. It's the most difficult thing for these people ever to be able to do, is just to come out and say, ladies and gentlemen, we've made a terrible error in judgment. To do that would show sincerity, number one, and people would actually forgive you because you truly are coming out and saying, we clearly made a mistake. We did not train our officers to do this. This officer has truly went over and stepped above his bounds, and we're going to do something about it. That officer is no longer with us, just as they did with the young man that got shot in the car at the gas station. Okay, they fired that officer. Okay, so they came out and they did what they were supposed to do immediately. They didn't wait. They let him go. But in this case, with the officer still being on the force, still receiving funds and donations, and still being able to hide behind this cloak of secrecy, yes, people are going to continue to be outraged because it looks as if you are just glossing over the problem, and you're coming into our community and you want to walk with us and hold hands and sing Kumbaya, but when it's all said and done, the young man's still dead, the officer's still on the force, and your police force is still predominantly white. So nothing had been done whatsoever. Now, the issue about the black media. Why is this stuff being covered, all the good stuff not being covered? Because we don't control the media. We don't. ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Nightly News, PBS, no brothers and sisters control that. We don't flip the switches. We don't pay the bills. So those who do pay the bills are the ones that are going to decide what we see. Again, how do we combat that? You got to get more African Americans. You got to get more Hispanics and Latinos and other people of other races who actually care about how they are viewed to become owners, not become just workers. Because if you're labor, like when I was a producer at WMAQ Radio in the 1990s, that was owned by white folks. Westinghouse owned that station, and it was ran by a white Irishman. He was the executive editor. So do you think as just an overnight producer, I could have went in there and made some noise and produced my own black news? Hell no. They would have been like, man, they go to unemployment line over there on that other side of the street. So you got to become owners. You got to be able to make the decisions if you're going to be able to say, let's talk about good news that black people are a part of. And I just don't see that happening right now because we don't want to spend our money with each other. We don't want to put our money in the same pot. People get that money, and they immediately want to run and spend it with the other people.
Boom. And we need, like, a sound of some gunshots or something so that we can fire them off. Because between the two of y'all, there ain't nothing left to be said on that. So,
but let me add something real quick, Patrick. See, now for me personally, bro, when I'm interjecting my opinions, I'm really doing it from the soul. You know, it's like I always appreciate if someone's like, man, right on, brother, you hit it on the head. But I'm doing it because I want to raise awareness in people. You know, I actually want people to actually feel that this needs to happen and do it. You know, I'll give an example. It's like when you host a talk show and somebody makes a point and then like Dr. Phil or whoever, everybody start applauding because he done said something. Okay, the applause doesn't, you know, that doesn't mean anything. Let's actually make something happen. So, yeah, I definitely appreciate, you know, what we're saying. I think we are having some effect, but the boom should be that people are joining UI, that people are paying for the $24 membership, that people are actually starting to look to see if they can create their own news, that people are actually spending money with black folks in black businesses, shopping black, being black, and supporting black. That's what should be the gunshot right there. That should be the boom that we need to hear.
And we don't even need a boom because you just made one.
Right on.
So with that, we're going to take a short break as we transition to the next topic while y'all listen to this PSA, and then we'll be right back.
Blue, why don't animals talk? Why do dogs have wet noses? Why is an 11 pronounced 21?
Kids ask a lot of questions.
Why do I have a belly button?
But you don't have to know every answer.
Why is the ocean salty?
Because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent.
Why are there 50 states?
There are thousands of children in foster care who don't need every question answered.
Why is pizza round?
They just need you. For more information on how you can adopt, go to adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
All right, everybody, welcome back. And that PSA, there are a lot of black children out there that need to be adopted. Black children in foster care typically don't get the same type of treatment that other people get. They often don't get reviewed, they don't get looked at, and they don't get placed. So we definitely need to take care of those young brothers and sisters out there that don't have a family just yet. And we need to do our part.
Yes, we do. It takes a village, and I think some of the adults in the village need to reach back and find out which kids are out here with no one to care for them and do something to be of assistance.
Of course. So topic 2, we're moving on. The Federal Reserve Consumer Finance Report came out in the beginning of this month. That's the beginning of this month, people. And basically what it said was black people own less than 3% of the nation's wealth. The same is the bottom. The same is the bottom. They say if you say things 3 times, it has dramatic effect. The same is the bottom, 40% of whites. Now, the mean and median household income was also the lowest for blacks of all other groups. The mean or the average income of a black family was $95,000, and we all know people like Oprah Winfrey and Michael Jordan pushed that average way up. The median household income, which is the income directly in the middle, if you line all of them up and pick the number right out of the middle, it was $11,000. So what does that mean for us as a people and our abilities economically? How do we take those numbers and move forward? Go ahead, Professor.
Well, one of the things I think we need to first start doing is stop living beyond our means. And a lot of us, unfortunately, have bought into the whole ideals of materialism. I mean, and that's based on white supremacy, white supremacist mindsets of its own, because of our own diminished vision or view of ourselves, because we see ourselves through their lens. So being as though we see ourselves as less than, or we see ourselves as not good enough, we're always trying to, buy our own happiness and buy our self-esteem through these products. So we buy the expensive cars we can't afford. We try to move in the houses we can't afford. And at the end of the day, our disposable income is to the point that I think those stats are generous, because a lot of us are living in the minus world. When you talk about our bank accounts with negative statements and playing catch up all the time. So I think that we need to change our spending habits, and I think we need to start focusing on building from within. Just as Brother Terry said before, we need to start spending our money with black people, and those black people need to spend their money with more black people, and we need to do it in a way where it's where the money is circulating similar to what we once had when we had the boom towns, the boom towns of the late 1800s and the early 1900s, where black communities were thriving because we had nowhere to spend our money. So I think the answer to that, and this is why I really am breaking my neck to get down to Ferguson, is because that place is fertile right now for some leadership and direction, and I think that's a place that we can start to institute some of those values, where we start talking about building from within, and we start talking about how we can share the wealth or create wealth amongst ourselves and lock other people out. Because when you look at the economics and how things are perceived right now, you have black people who have businesses competing with Asians, competing with whites and other nationalities for the black dollar. Everybody wants to come into the black community and get the black dollar, but nobody wants to share the money within the black community, not even the blacks that have money. And I think that's a big problem right there.
Brother Terry?
3%, huh? Wow, we are the bottom 3%. And we average that out for a median income. Each of us is only pulling in about $11,000 a year, which equals less than $1,000 a month. What that means, quite simply, is we will never be owners. We will never participate in ownership of anything. We will never participate as major investors in any of these companies because we don't have the money to purchase their stock. We may be able to get a share or two of Nike or Reebok or Target or Walmart, but we will never be major players in the game not pulling in $11,000 a year. So what that means is our voices will never be heard. We will never be able to band together to truly have an impact economically in this country. Until we can find a way to pull our median incomes up, we're going to be in serious trouble. A part of this plot that I see, again, this is just me. This is only me from my existence in this earth. A part of this economic plot that I see by the Caucasian race was that they never intended for the black man to participate in their economy in the first place. They always intended for us only to be consumers and never owners. So they're going to make sure that you only bring in just enough to go out and have your needs met, but never be able to pull in enough to actually compete with what they're doing, which is becoming major players in the investment game and major players in ownership. All of those major buildings, the tall skyscrapers that you see in Chicago and Boston and L.A. and Detroit and all across the world, they don't want you to own that. That would symbolize power, black power. Black power scares white people, so they're not going to let you own anything. So they want to keep us limited to menial labor. They want to keep you limited in the jobs that you can do. They want to keep you limited in what you can own. So if you want to own, Sister Susie's nail salon, they cool with that. You want to own Tyrone's barbershop, they cool with that. But when you start talking about we're going to create a black education network, we're going to build black schools all across the United States. Oh, now you're starting to make some noise that's going to scare white folk. So they're not going to give you any funding for that. They're not going to give you any grants to do that. They're not going to pour any money into your economic communities to be able to do that. They want your tax base weakened. That's what they want. Gary, Indiana, Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore, Cleveland, all of those places where there is no infrastructure because the mills shut down, there's nothing to replace it. After all these years, do you see any white folks trying to come and replace that income? No. Why? Well, because you got to involve black folks that live there. You got to give them some money. You got to put them back to work. You got to let them make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year and be able to buy homes and participate, send their kids to school. And they don't want that. So we got to find some way to educate ourselves and become employed at levels that are higher than where we're at now. But primarily, again, ownership is when you really start to have power, similar to what Magic Johnson is doing. When you are actually in a position to own, that's when you get your respect. That's when you can start to make some noise. But as long as you're the ticket taker at the movie theater and not the owner, you have no say.
And I want to take a moment to correct. I misspoke, should I say. I didn't mean to say household income. I meant to say household wealth. But it doesn't make any of your comments any less accurate or true.
Because if the household wealth only equals 11,000, that's the same thing. Right. It's like the point is, as all across the nation, if we took every single black adult, not the children, but every single black adult aged 21 and over, and you say how much are you making per year, and you average that out, yeah, we still don't have enough really to make a dent in anything.
Well, what's interesting about that is if you do at about 9,000, we'll say there's about 9,000 black families, which was the last time I looked. I'm sure there's more than that now. And you take the median of 11,000, that means the black family, the average or the black family with that median and that many, that only equals about $50 billion. So that's not a whole lot of money when you parse it out. And I like to take the reason, me personally, I like to take the median is because when you take the average, like we said, you have people like Oprah Winfrey, people like Michael Jordan, people like Michael Jackson before he died. They skew the average. They just make it's just ungodly. But when you look at the median and everybody gets a slice for slice piece of the cake, to me you get a more accurate representation of what the average person is living like, what the average person is dealing with. But even with the numbers being as low as they are, Professor, would you say that we're locked out forever? Like, are we officially a permanent underclass, as Dr. Claude Anderson warned us we would be by the year 2014, 2015 if we didn't get our economic act together? Are we a permanent underclass, or can we get out from underneath this thing?
No, I definitely think we can get out from underneath it. I don't think we're a permanent underclass, but it's going to take more effort and discipline now than it would have, say, 15 years ago. It would take more effort and discipline now than it would have taken 15 years ago. And the reason behind that is because, as Brother Terry said, we currently don't even have the economic stability that we had 15 years ago, where you had menial, or not just menial, but lower level jobs where we were working, blue collar jobs where we were available. We don't have those now. So, but it would take a more concentrated effort, and it would take a paradigm shift in our way of thinking. And I think that's the big thing. It would take a paradigm shift in terms of how we're operating, and it'll take a paradigm shift in the consciousness of the black community. And right now, we're dealing with it on so many different levels. I mean, we're dealing with a built-in welfare state mentality of a lot of people, unfortunately. We're dealing with a lot of brothers and sisters who would rather be integrationists than rather support our cause. And basically, what we're dealing with, we just have too many distractions going on to actually face the issues and topics right now as a cohesive unit. But I think slowly but surely those things are building up as we're dealing with, excuse the background noise, I'm out and about, but as we're currently dealing with the things that are going on, I think that we have a lot of a building of like-minded people, and it's starting to surge. This information age, that's the one thing they weren't prepared for, is the information age, so that we can move forward in this whole situation.
Brother Terry, you have any comments on that? Are we a permanent underclass in your opinion, or is there an out?
I like to be optimistic. I always want to be able to see that there is a way to move forward. That's one of my own personal things that I always say to myself: relentless forward progress, T. Banks. No matter what the case, relentless forward progress must occur. So I think we could find a way to dig ourselves out of the economic hole that we're in. We could get to a level of economic sustainability. But the problem is that the system isn't letting us compete fairly in the economic workforce. That we're not competing in the marketplace as we should be in terms of the jobs that we hold. So again, if my rent is $500 and I'm only bringing in $1,000 a month, I can't compete, and the neighbor can't compete, and Miss Jones can't compete, and Miss Smith can't compete, and Grandma Liz can't compete. We can't put our monies together and create any wealth as a community because we are making so little. So it keeps us where we are. The only way we would be able to come out of that I can see, again, from my own personal opinion, is we've got to go back to that it takes a village mentality. We've got to go back to the mentality that they had in Oklahoma in the early 1900s, where they built a black community that had sustainable wealth. They were actually very wealthy people. And, of course, you see what happened. White folks got mad, made some more excuse about, hey, some nigger came to town and raped a white woman, and they burned the whole damn black town down. So we have to look at, are we unselfish enough as a people to take the little that we have and create a national black fund? I've always advocated, when I have discussions with myself in my own spiritual realm, I always ask myself, would it be possible to get black folks that I don't know to start an investment club with me, where we all agree every 2 weeks when we get paid, we're going to put X amount of dollars into this fund. We're going to determine what stocks we're going to purchase. And when we get to a certain level, then we're going to look at what we can purchase and become owners of. Properties that we can purchase, distressed properties. Let's look at what, again, it's going to take a person who has that vision and has that unselfish nature to say, yes, we can make this happen, but it's got to happen all across black America, not just one community, not just on UI radio with 5 or 10 people wanting to do it. It has to be multiplied by the thousands. Every person in the black community needs to contribute at least $1, only one, 4 quarters. something you go and buy a soda and some chips with. Just put that dollar into the investment club. Put it into the black fund, and that money will then begin to add up. So it can be done, but it's certainly going to be a challenge.
All right. And me personally, I think it's possible as well. I don't think we're locked into a permanent underclass just yet. If we don't get it together soon, my tone may change soon. But for right now, I definitely think there's hope. So we're going to transition to our third topic. And as always, we got a message before we, well, not as always today, we have a message before we transition to our next topic. So we'll be right back. The Society for Research in Child Development. Sorry about that.
Blood pressure is serious, and I can quit whenever I want. But when I quit, you quit. Sincerely, your heart.
To get your high blood pressure to a healthy range, visit heart.org/blood pressure. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
And we're back. And, of course, we had to bring up that one about high blood pressure because that's something else that plagues our community. So everybody make sure you taking care of yourself.
It does indeed. I myself, have to deal with, the high blood pressure issue. As you get older, I'm not a world-class athlete anymore. I'm more settled, solitary. My car takes me everywhere, less walking, more eating, sleeping late at night and eating late at night. It all results in high blood pressure. So absolutely a positive and powerful PSA right there.
Well, I appreciate that. So the third topic is going to hopefully be positive as well, although there's some negativity involved in it, I'm sure. The MacArthur Fellows. And for those of you that don't know, the MacArthur Fellows is a grant that basically awards, they pick 21 creative people, exceptionally creative individuals with a track record of achievement and the potential for significant contributions in the future. They pick 21 of these people every year. They give them a no-strings-attached stipend of $625,000 to be paid out over 5 years. Now, again, this is no strings attached. That means these people can take this money and do basically whatever they want with it. They have maximum freedom. The wonderful part about the 2014 class is that there were 4 black people selected. And there's only 21 people. One was Mr. Terrence Hayes from Pittsburgh, PA, 42 years old. He's a poet. Another is Rick Lowe, 53 years old, from Houston, Texas. Then we have Steve Coleman from Allentown, PA, 57 years old. He's a jazz composer and saxophonist. But what we really want to talk about today is Miss Jennifer Eberhardt. She's a 49-year-old Stanford professor. She teaches social psychology. And she received her grant for the work she's been doing in the role of helping to define through statistics and through data analysis racial tensions, racial bias in the modern society. More specifically, racial bias in modern policing and criminal sentencing. And in her work, she's basically found, and I'm sure black people all over the world are going to say, well, we already knew this. Well, they gave the grant to her because white people apparently are going to act like they didn't know this. So she basically found that the darker you are and the more kinky your hair is, the more likely you are to have run-ins with the cops, the more likely you are to be confused with criminals, the more likely you are to receive stiffer punishments, the more likely you are to receive the death penalty. Now, what we want to highlight here is the fact that she received this grant, this MacArthur Genius Grant, for her work. Does this finally open the door? Are we finally coming to a place in America where we can say, where we can finally decide or start talking about race relations in America? Go ahead, Professor. What's your take on that?
No, I don't think we're there yet. This is a good start. It's a nice gesture. But often, as we've seen throughout the history of this country, there's often been token gestures tossed in our direction to give us the appearance of progress. It's great that individuals can receive accolades for their work and uncovering racism, white supremacy, and its effects on the black community, nationally / internationally, if you will. But at the same time, until those monies go into reparative acts, reparations and so forth, until those monies go into situations where we can economically pull ourselves out of the status where we are the people making $11,000, per individual. Was that a step per individual, per household?
That was per individual.
Okay, so until we can move on until we can are in a position to do so in that fashion, we can't have that conversation. And I mean, just look at what's happening around the country. Black people being mistreated and terrorized by the police forces around the country. And instead of there being movements to remove these officers from their place of duty, instead of there being movements to correct the behaviors from within these police districts and sheriff offices, what's happening is they're being rewarded with paid vacations. They're being rewarded with scholarships, and not just scholarships, but fundraisers to help them and assist them in case there's some type of legal process that they may have to face for obstructing our rights. So, I don't think that we're at that point. I think that the only time we'll get to that point, there are two things that have to happen. First of all, they have to be a recognized wrong. In other words, they have to recognize the wrongs that they've done to us, and we need to have that done in ways that logistically and philosophically address our demise as a community, so that we can reverse some of the things that they've done to us. In addition to that, they need to have an internal conversation with themselves. And I mean, members of the white community, these liberals need to go out and have some conversations with these conservatives, and they need to address the issue of racism in their own backyard. As I've often said, 95% of black people you meet today would totally toss all allegiance to Africa and African values, all allegiance to being black today, if white people suddenly say, you know what, we were wrong, and we'll just accept you as you are, and we won't treat you in such a malicious fashion anymore. That's how forgiving, that's how hard it is for most blacks to deal with the psychological discomfort that comes with cognitive dissonance. And when we have all of that going on in our neighborhoods, I mean, just think about what Wendell Pierce said when he was on the talk show the other night on HBO. When he said basically a black man getting pulled over in America is in danger of losing his life. A traffic stop is almost synonymous with walking past, a group of thugs or whatever who you see have guns, who are about to rob you. You have a better chance of leaving that incident alive than sometimes in dealing with the police. So, I think that until we get to those points, I don't think we're ever going to be ready for a conversation on race. And basically, we're dealing with racial tradition. This is a tradition of hatred by the white society, by the white community, that needs to be undone within their backyard first before we even bridge this conversation.
You said a couple of things I had never thought about before, but go ahead, Brother Terry. What's your take on this?
Well, her research definitely, I mean, it points out something that we as a race have already known, because we are the subjects of the very discussion that she went out and dealt with. We know that I'm a dark-skinned brother, so I would clearly know that the light-skinned brother with the curly hair that looks like Al B. Sure is probably going to be accepted less feared than me. Brother looked like he, packed guns all the time and is ready to go off at a moment, built like a running back. I mean, so She highlighted what we already know. I think it was done more so to try to get some white folks to acknowledge that this what they think is a phenomenon, that this actually is a reality. So that's what I think about her study. I think it was positive and it was necessary. I'll never criticize a black person for trying to do something positive that bring any kind of light to our issue. So I'm certainly not critical of her in any way. What I would like to have seen her do, though, if you get some $600,000 or so free, then I would, if it were me, I would have taken that research and say, you know what, let me actually invest this $600,000 in the black community as a part of my research. Let me see if I can maybe find some people who have some solid business plans and help them open up some small businesses and then track and study how well that business grows. Now, that would have been a positive, bit of research to have done, because it would have had productive outputs as opposed to, $600,000 going in her pocket and all we have is some writings in a book that say dark-skinned people get treated less well than light-skinned people. But again, positive in that light that she did at least try to do something. Now, as far as can we have the discussion's already been had. We always talk about race. You've had shows, you had Nightline when Ted Koppel was on it, and you've had, CNN shows where we discuss race. We're always talking about race. What are we talking about right now? Race. So the discussion has it's always been available. The problem is that it doesn't happen enough, and that goes back to who controls the media. Again, you've got to ask white people, first of all, to unlearn learned behavior, and that's very difficult to do. From the time that they were kids, I posted a picture on our page the other day, and nobody even paid any attention to it. It showed 3 black cops in riot gear for some issue that was going on in some country. And a little tiny little white boy, little baby about 2 years old, was dressed in Ku Klux Klan robe, standing up there touching on one of the black cops' little shield that he had. He was just putting his finger on it. And the symbolism in that went all through my body. Here you have a little tiny 2-year-old little white kid already being taught to hate people. You know what I mean? Dude, you've been on Earth 48 months and you already being taught to hate. So this behavior that then carries on into their adult years just simply is the reason why we can't have the discussion on a regular basis, because the little 2-year-old isn't going to want to have that discussion when he's 21, because he's already convinced that I'm just the nigger who's not worthy of life. So the only way to reverse that, again, is to get white folks to just simply not be so afraid to face the truth. Yes, you brought us here in chains. Yes, you killed us. You raped us. You separated men from women. You separated families. You caused an incredible amount of damage to us as a people. And yes, we are still playing catch up. Do some use that crutch as an excuse? Absolutely. You got some black folks that always, the white man, what he did in slavery is the reason I can't get ahead today. Some of it's bull crap, and we know it. You can move ahead. Sometimes it's just your own inability to want to move ahead that causes the problem. But overall, we would need them to acknowledge what they did. And I don't see them doing it, not in big numbers. I don't see anybody in the media saying we're going to make it a part, not only during Black History Month, not for them little 28 days or 29 with the leap year, but we're going to do this every single month, once a month, twice a week, beginning of the week and the end of the week. We're going to have some roundtable discussions on how we black people and we white people can figure out a way to get along and try to do some things together to move ahead. Again, in Fantasyland, on Fantasy Island, where Mr. Rourke and Tattoo used to live, that can happen. I mean, no problem. Let's fly the plane in there and make it happen. But in the United States of America in 2014, the realism in me said, that ain't going to quite happen.
Well, what's interesting about what both of you guys said is if you go and read some of the comments underneath one of the articles that spoke to her getting this award and her research, the comments, and if you guys that are listening, if you guys don't read comments, you really need to read comments, because they give you a very, very good picture of what's in the mind of people. For some reason, people feel very comfortable revealing their darkest, deepest, innermost lunatics. behind the protection of their keyboards. But they're basically calling her a buffoon, an idiot, calling her research unfounded, calling it biased, calling it this, that, and the third, saying she's just trying to justify why black people are ignorant monkeys and justify niggerish tendencies and this, that, and the third. So it really got me to wonder, because one of the comments that she made in a interview I read from her was that it's fine, black people can really address a lot of the things going on within the community or that we experience from an emotional standpoint, but we need hardcore numbers to be able to prove to people that these things are real. I find it interesting that she has hardcore numbers and they're still treating her as if what she's saying is purely emotional. So is it even, we know it's difficult. And real quick, I'm going to start with the professor, and then I'm going to go to you, Brother Terry. Do you guys believe it's even possible for them to unlearn the hatred that's been instilled in them since, as Brother Terry said, they're like 2 or 3 years old? Is it even possible for us, the subjects of their hatred, to be able to present anything to them to get them to see that what they've been taught and what's being reinforced over their life is wrong?
It's very difficult. I mean, you may be able to sway some, but some people, carry hatred around as like a badge, and not only that, is, some of them tie their heritage to the hate. And we really have to understand and study, the nature. I often talk about the nature of the beast. And when I talk about that, I'm really talking about the nature of the members of the white community. We really look at them, and this is why I always go to the media. We've been fooled into thinking that these are kind, loving, caring, docile people. Leave it to Beaver. I'll keep going back to that. They had, the Andy Griffith Show. So if you grew up in the 50s, 60s, and the 70s, and even in the 80s, those shows are still prevalent, showing on TV every day. Facts of Life, all these different shows that were put on TV, even though Mel Carter was in Facts of Life, but, basically all these different shows, Silver Spoon, all these shows and media exploits always present them in the light where they're kind, loving, and giving. But it never talks about their history. And these have been the people who have a history of hatred and a history of war. I mean, look at what's going on. If you ever peep how they call, and this is a prime example. They call hunting a game. Okay? Hunting is a sport. What they kill is game. That gives you the mindset of what we're dealing with when we're talking about dealing with members of the white community. That's in their blood. That all that hatred, all that bloodlust, that's in their blood. I don't know if you can unlearn that, because, just as we're docile and just as we're so loving and forgiving as a people to others, not to one another, but to others, I've seen the exact opposite in their community. And look at how people like Tim Weiss is treated. Tim Weiss is going around saying pretty much the same exact things that you're talking about, with the sister, the information she presented. And they're both right. But look at how they respond to her when she's presenting facts to them. Look at how they respond to Tim Weiss. They tell Tim Weiss that he's the product of liberal white guilt. So, when you have that mindset out there and it's being reinstituted, and then you have the fact of the matter that they don't want to address the things they've done wrong. Just as Brother Terry said earlier, they have the biggest problem with saying, you know what, we fucked up. We messed up. And because with that comes accountability. And they don't ever want to be accountable. If you ever look at the documentary, there's a documentary called Banished, where a brother goes to 3 sundown towns, where blacks were uprooted out of those towns. They were lynched and uprooted. If you go back to those towns, they have removed those pages from the history books. They removed those archives, those pages from the news archive because they don't even want to talk about it. When you ask them about it, they speak in hushed and whispered tones, as though, it's something, yes, it's something they're ashamed of, but it's something they'd rather not discuss. So they're not even really rather to discuss it in a regular tone and have a real conversation about it. When they're trying to say that the cross burning is based on their Christian traditions and not based on terrorism and racial hatred, how do we bridge how do we even begin to get to the part where they can get to having a conversation and then saying, you know what, we have to acknowledge the wrongs that we've done and we want to make, we want to actually deal with it. Let's work together so that we can deal with it. I'm sorry, I don't see it. I don't see, not in my lifetime. Maybe if I have some children, maybe their grandchildren will see it. But me personally, I don't see it because they see us coming up as them taking a step back. And they've been socially engineered to feel that way, specifically poor and middle-class whites, to feel as though there's a limited part of the pie available and that they can have access to their parts of the pie, which is why they're always talking about taking things back to the way things used to be, but they don't have any problem with us only getting that 3% of the pie. In fact, that 3% is more than 1.5% or 0.5% of what we used to get, so already they feel as though we're getting too much. So, not when they're still having conversations about taking their country back because they have a black president. I don't see it, brother.
And you hit on a lot right there. Brother Terry, I know you got to run, but what's your take real quick? Bring us home.
I sure will. Yeah, we're at 2:00, and I want to keep the show tight as well. It's echoing the sentiments that the professor just said. It's things that everyone listening on UI already know. Black and white will always be divided. I never see us coming together in unison in large numbers, both millions and millions of whites and blacks working together. I think that it's literally inbred in white folks to feel that they are the only race on earth that actually deserves to exist. And that's just the truth. If you look at the history of how these people got their wealth, you will see it was taken by deception, murder, fraud, and so on. If you look at how they brought us here and what they intended to do with us, you can see that it's very difficult to then think these people are ever going to apologize and actually want to work with us and let us live next door to them in unity. It's just not going to happen, not in this lifetime, only when we get to the next realm and whatever people believe they believe. But when you get to that next realm where you're going, maybe it might happen there, but not here in the United States of America.
Well, people, there you have it. It's been a great show. I want to thank both the professor and Brother Terry for joining us again for this last hour. If you are not a member of UI, go and join up. If you just want to donate, you can do that too. Membership is urbanintellectuals.com/members. To donate is urbanintellectuals.com/donate. We got a lot of things going on right now, a lot of things coming up to be going on in the future. So definitely stay in touch. And we're gonna leave you with this quick message, and then you'll be free to go. Hopefully we enlightened some of you guys, and hopefully we got you guys to think about things a little bit differently. We'll see you next week.
According to Society for Research and Child Development, black children do better in school when they have a sense of racial pride. Shouldn't they get that sense of racial pride augmented at school from the curriculums? Urban Intellectual is working on a curriculum to do just that. You can help. Donate or become a member. Go to urbanintellectuals.com/members to become a member, or go to urbanintellectuals/donate to donate and help your child grow up in a world where they know who they are.